Good evening. Welcome to Mr. Tipple's. My name is Charles Unger. Collectively, we are the Charles Unger Experience, just for you and you and you. All my friends out there in radio and television land, we love you madly. Tonight, we've assembled some of the finest talent in the Bay Area. On piano, we have the lovely and talented Sue Crossman. On the bass, Mr. Ben Louise. And on the drums, Tony the Steamroller Coleman. In light of all the protestations, protesting, we are honoring George today. And BLM, we love you madly. Thank you very much. That tune was entitled Coming Home, Baby. That goes back a ways. It's one of those good old R&B staples. We are going to feature our bass player on this number entitled You Don't Know What Love Is. But maybe you do, and I don't know what I'm talking about. We're having so much fun tonight. We hope you guys are enjoying yourselves out there. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Minding those kids, washing those dishes, having dinner, working, taking care. This is for you. Lou Grossman once again on piano. You don't know what love is till you know the meaning of the blue. Until you had a love you had to lose. You don't know what love is. The Master Blaster. Yeah. That was Ben Luis once again, holding down the funky side of the bass. We're having such a good time tonight. We hope you guys are enjoying your evenings, mornings, around the world, afternoons. Oh, yeah, East Coast. We're going to do an original. We're going to change the pace. I'll tell you about, I had the great fortune of going to Sweden several times, playing the Malmo Music Festival, a couple other festivals. We wrote a song many years ago entitled Swedish Sunset. We're going to do that for you right now.
We loving it.
Sue, what do you got to say about it?
Yeah, Sue.
Cool.
Say something. Cool.
Is this on?
Yeah, Sue Grossman, stand up, take a bow, Sue.
I am standing.
She is standing. Stand, in the end, you'll still be you. Let's do something for all the lovers. One time through ballad, then swing.
Yeah.
Which one?
Misty. Okay, it's unanimous. We're going to do something for all the lovers in the house. You know who you are. Yes, that went out to all the lovers in the house. Yes. We have a little virtual tip jar I should tell you about before we go any further. You can find us on Venmo. Take the time out. Make a little contribution towards these fine artists you see beside me. You can also go to PayPal. One more time on the bass, Mr. Ben Luis. He's a funky man. On the piano, the lovely and talented Sue Grossman. And on the drums, one and only, Tony the Steamroller Coleman. My name is Charles Unger. I'm your host for the evening. I want to say thank you so much for taking the time out to be with us. We love you. You are loved and appreciated. We'd like to thank the wonderful staff here at Mr. Tipple's, Jay Bordelot, and my good friend, Mr. Lord, holding it down for us as we broadcast to you live and in color, Panavision, Technicolor, Magic Dust. Anyway, we're having a lot of fun. Hope you are enjoying your Saturday evening wherever you are around the world. We are the Charles Unger Experience. There's only one, so accept no substitutes. All right? All right. We're going to take a short minute and tell you one more about some music you can find on our website, charlesungerexperience.com. We also have an array of merchandise, some really unique pieces and artwork. So please stop by and check our site out. Do our break song, San Francisco After Dark. We're going to change the pace and do something in honor of all the protestations. I call them. But we all got to do our part. Everybody has a part to play to move forward as a country and a world. We are the Charles Unger Experience. I want to tell you one more time, we are here for you. We're going to do another original composition. This song's entitled San Francisco After Dark, or Have It Your Way. Thank you. Sue Grossman. It's official. We're going to take a 2 minutes. We'll be right back. And now a word from our sponsor.
Tipple. Shaboom.
Hi guys, welcome back to Mr. Tipples. I'm Roger, and tonight we are going to be doing something a little different. Usually we take this time to do a cocktail demonstration where I teach you how to make a specific cocktail and talk a little bit about the history of that drink. But tonight we're going to be doing a little whiskey demonstration. So I'm just going to go over some different types of whiskey and talk a little bit about why you might want to order one over another, and also get into the history of them just a bit. So we're going to start off with the origin of whiskey. So we're not sure whether whiskey actually began in Ireland or Scotland. Really depends on who you ask. But either way, we're certain that it started in that general area. It originally began as essentially the same as beer, but you take the process through which you would make beer and you add the element of distillation, where you're actually pulling the alcohol directly out of the mash as the alcohol is being created, and that allows you to create a much higher alcohol content product, which they then place into oak barrels, age it, and by the end, you have this delightful product, whiskey. Now, really important element to it is, of course, the aging, where you're pulling a lot of that flavor out of the wood, and that's what gives it the color and flavor that it gets. Although, interestingly, for most whiskeys, you can actually add coloring, and many places do. It's perfectly acceptable, normal, and it's been happening basically since the beginning of whiskey, just to add a little bit more character to it. Now, with Irish whiskey, what you're usually going to get in terms of flavor is a nice, soft, sweet, very approachable style of drink. It can have some harshness to it, particularly depending on the age of the spirit. The longer it ages, usually that harshness starts to develop out of it, and you're going to get less astringency, less sort of a chemical flavor, and you're going to get more kind of depth of flavor, which is why you see the higher age statements tend to fetch much higher prices. Also, of course, because the time that it takes to age it ends up costing money for the distiller, so they need to make that money back somehow. When you're looking at a whiskey, generally with an Irish or Scotch whiskey, you're going to see higher age statements. Like, they must really be aged for longer in order to get that higher quality product. So usually somewhere around the 10-year range is kind of where you want to start in terms of a higher end product. So what we have here is Redbreast 12. And in a lot of cases, these distillers don't even offer younger than about 10 years, which is the case for Redbreast. Again, the flavor profile is not super complex, but sweet in what I would call like a honey sweet sort of way. Not super fruity, not sort of corn sweetness or sugary sweetness. A little bit different that way. Moving on, we have Scotch whiskey. Now, Scotch whiskey is usually characterized by something we call peat. Okay, so it's really smoky, earthy sort of flavor that gets infused into the whiskey, and it comes from the peat that actually exists in Scotland, which comes from peat moss, peat bogs, and it's basically just really compressed plant matter. It was usually used just to heat homes, and then when they started making whiskey, they would use it to dry out their mash before they started the distillation. Most whiskey in Scotland that is produced, even if it has a lot of peat flavor in it, they don't actually use the peat for that purpose. The flavor is added later, just because that's the traditional flavor that people are looking for. But the end result is the same, which is that you get that smokiness infused into the drink, and it's a really distinct flavor. It's different from what you would think of from a smoked brisket or something that you might get in the U.S. It's a, like I said, very earthy sort of flavor, and even a little vegetal. Now, not all Scotch whiskey is peated, and it is important to actually ask. If you really don't know, you should find out, because if you don't like peat, you want to avoid certain regions that are very famous for it, and if you do like peat, those are regions you're going to want to gravitate toward, and you're going to want to avoid other ones. Famously, Islay, I-S-L-A-Y. It's a small island off the coast of Scotland, but they are the most famous for the peat production for their scotches. So what we have here is an example of that. It's Ardbeg. It's a 10-year aged scotch, and it is obviously quite peat forward, as it is an Islay scotch. Another one that's pretty traditional, or that most people are probably familiar with, is Lafroig. Those are really kind of the big players within that peaty Scotch world, and among several others. Moving on, we have Japanese whiskey. Now, Japanese whiskey is also sometimes referred to as Japanese Scotch. Why that is because the first Scotch, or the first whiskeys that were produced in Japan, actually were brought over from Shinjiro Tori, who studied in Scotland under a master distiller. He learned how to create whiskey in Scotland, and the process that he used was basically identical to the one that was used in Scotland, including originally the use of quite a lot of peat. But when he brought it over to Japan, the heavily peated whiskey that he created was wildly unpopular. The different food that people eat in Japan really didn't mesh very well with that really heavy sort of tobacco-y, earthy, smoky flavor that you're getting out of the Scotch. So they ended up reworking it and created what is still today sold as Yamazaki, which is a very delicate, very well balanced, nice, gentle sweetness and complex flavors all around. A really precise style of spirit that's really pretty different from any other kind of whiskey that you're going to get. It's also, right now, very high-end, very in demand, and very expensive. The demand spiked a few years ago, and because of the nature of having to age Scotch as long as you do, they ended up not really being able to keep up with demand. So right now, particularly Yamazaki is very expensive, but if you can find a bottle and get it for a reasonable price, well worth it, very, very good. Moving on. So here we have our American whiskeys. Now, I'm going to start with rye. Now, rye was actually the first whiskey really produced and drank in America. Interestingly, you can also refer to Canadian whiskey as rye. The differences are actually fairly substantial, but it basically comes down to, in America, when you are selling something as rye, it is specifically a mash bill of 51% or more of rye. And then we have bourbon. Now, bourbon is by far the most widely drank style of whiskey in America. Bourbon, 51% corn. What does that mean? Well, the final product really reflects the ingredients that are used to create it. So, with rye, think about rye bread. You have something that's kind of spicy and complex in that way. With bourbon, you have something more along the lines of a corn flavor. So it's nice and sweet, it's very gentle. The more corn that is used in the mash bill, the sweeter and gentler it is. So that's why something like Maker's Mark, that's 100% corn, is the sweetest and smoothest of all whiskey. The other interesting thing, because these other styles of whiskey, if they are malted, that simply means they're made with barley. These, being made with rye and corn respectively, they actually age for less time. So you will see very high-end bourbons that are aged for 8 years, maybe 12 years. It's very rare that you're going to see something aged up to 21 years or more. Whereas with the Irish and Scotch whiskeys, you could see them aged all the way up to 50 years for some really insane stuff. But usually 21, 25, those are pretty common as well. So you can get a very good high-end bourbon that's aged 8 years and is going to have fantastic complexity and flavor to it. Now, of all of these, what are you really going to be looking for if you want to order one at a bar? If you want sweetness, you're going to want something probably a bourbon or an Irish whiskey. If you want depth and complexity, but you're not really looking for that really heavy smoky flavor, you're going to want either rye if you want a little bit of spice, or a Japanese whiskey if you're looking for something a little more refined. And if you do love that hearty, smoky, earthy flavor, then Scotch is really the only game in town. A couple other quick notes. Just if you're looking at a bottle of whiskey and you see bonded on it. Now, bonded is specific to America, but it basically just means that it's a high proof. It's a 100 proof, has to be. It's actually a legal designation due to basically the poor quality of spirits that were being produced in America, and there wasn't really any quality control. The Bonded Act of 1897 was put in place to basically ensure that there would be some sort of quality control put on the spirits. Now, in a lot of cases, it's considered sort of an antiquated method for determining quality, but you will see some whiskey producers still actually go through the process of making sure that theirs is a bonded spirit. But it does mean that you're probably getting a decent quality and you're definitely getting a 100 proof drink, whereas most of the rest of these would be somewhere in the 80 proof range. Interestingly, Old Forester, not bonded, but it is still 100 proof, and you can usually see that somewhere on the label down here, but more commonly you're going to see something in the 80 proof range. So as I'm talking about this and getting quite thirsty, I'm going to have a quick sip of my personal favorite of these, which is this Redbreast 12. Again, nice delicate flavors, fairly sweet, honey notes to it. And one thing that I want to talk about just a little bit before we go is proper service of it. So this glass is called a Glencairn. It's actually a relatively modern invention, but it is designed to be the preferred and perfect glass for drinking your whiskey without ice. And all whiskeys can be improved with the addition of just a little bit of water. You really don't want to add too much. You're not trying to water it down at all. What you're trying to do is just open it up. Basically what it does is the water bonds to some of those sort of chemically astringent molecules, and it helps dissipate them so that when you're drinking it, you're not getting harshness, you're just getting the nice, clean, clear whiskey flavor. So, cheers.
Yeah, good evening. Welcome once again. My name is Charles, your musical host. We're going to take you to about 8:30 tonight. I'd like to, at this point in time, tell you about the great food and drinks we have here at Mr. Tipple's that you can take away with you. Just call us up. We will deliver to your door. Ring your doorbell. Wait for you to come. Ladies and gentlemen, on piano tonight, we have the dynamic and lovely Sue Grossman. On the bass, Mr. Ben Luis. And on the drums, Tony the Steamroller Coleman. My name is Charles Unger, your musical host from Montgomery, Alabama, by way of West Africa and points in between. Happy to be here tonight. Big shout out, much love to all the BLM people. This set we're going to dedicate to George. This set to George. Yeah. 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 George. Yeah. George. Yeah. George. Well, hip hop, hippin', you don't stop and rockin'. It's all about getting out there, getting your voice heard, getting your voice heard. You can't sit by looking shy. You gotta get on up. Get on up, y'all. Get on up. I need those grandmothers too. Fathers give the word. You gotta get on up. Yeah. Yeah. Get on up. Get your voice heard. Steamroller on the drums, ladies and gentlemen. Give him some love. Tony the Steamroller Coleman. On the bass, Mr. Ben Louise one more time. Charles Unger on saxophone, your musical host for the evening. And rounding out the group on the piano, Sue Grossman. Yeah. We're going to change the pace and do a ballad for you, a song by the great Carlos Santana. And we're going to dedicate it to all you wonderful people that are listening tonight. Europa. We have some original music we're going to do on the next couple of songs. The first one we're going to do is entitled Moon Over New Orleans. You can find it on our website or any of our social sites out there. We are the Charles Unger Experience. was a moon shining bright over New Orleans. Just one hug, just one kiss, and a moon. A moon over New Orleans. What a crowd, all 10,000 of you out there. 20 now. Hey, listen, did I mention that we have a virtual tip jar these days? It's called Venmo. You like the music, you like us, you love the music, and you love us. You love these wonderful artists you see beside me. Please go to your PayPal. One more time for Mr. Tipples, ladies and gentlemen, who make this all happen. Mr. Jay Bordelot. Y'all can't see him. We're going to get him up here, maybe. You know. Mr. Lord. Yeah. Woo-hoo. So, Roger Lord, ladies and gentlemen. Give Roger some props, too. Roger's the man that makes it all happen. Roger, we love you, man. Well, there comes a time in every band's life when they must take a pause and must bid you adieu. Ciao, Wiedersehen, sayonara, bye-bye. We gotta go, but we'll be back. We will return. Look for us. We are the Charles Unger Experience. One more time on bass, Ben Luis. On the drums, Tony the Steamroller. Incomparable and lovely Sue Grossman on piano. Don't forget Mr. Tipples. You need those cocktails, you want We got food, we got drinks, we got everything you need for a nice time at your crib, baby. Big shout out to all the protesters out there. We love you. All those put your lives on the line. We love you. We want to send a big shout out to Black Lives Matter. We love you. We are. Got your back, baby. Got your back. But we gotta go. They're gonna cut me off soon. But remember, wherever you go in this beautiful world, it's nice to be nice, but sometimes you gotta speak. Closed mouth don't get fed, baby. You gotta speak up. Tony the Steamroller, one more time. We gotta go. We've had so much fun, but we gotta run. Clock on the wall says we've had a ball. We're gonna make like a tree and branch out. We're gonna lead. Okay, I'll stop. But we gotta go. Thank you very much on behalf of the band. We say thank you again. We love you madly.